What's up, guys? Welcome back to Between the Pylons. I'm John Camacho. Thank you so much for watching. And guys, today we are talking about Omari Rogers out of Clemson. This is the last wide receiver I am doing for the 2021 draft profile extravagant. I don't know what to call it. This is my last draft profile on a wide receiver. I got two more running backs after this, but that's it, guys. We're getting up into the NFL draft. This is like my Christmas. I am so excited. Let's get right into Omari Rogers. We're talking about a guy who's on the smaller side. We're talking about 5'10", 210 pounds. Guy who really came on the scene for Clemson this past year. He was involved in the offense in his sophomore year, 2018, where he had 55 receptions for 575 yards, but to get 77 receptions for just over 1,000 yards in the 2020 season and 7 touchdowns. I think that's why he's getting a little bit of hype in this season. I think that's why he is being talked about this year. With that being said, let's get right into the skill chart so we can break down Amari Rogers in a little different way. Route running at a 5.4. This is kind of a checks the box grade for me, which you'll notice a lot for Amari Rogers, right? This is a guy who does not scream out like super high ceiling guy. I really don't think so. I think this is a guy that you're drafting to be your number 2 or number 3 receiver. I think this is a guy like that would fit great in like a Buffalo Bills offense, right? Play the slot, play a little bit outside, do a little bit of everything. I think he's a little bit too small to be outside consistently and doesn't really have the athletic profile for that. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Route running at a 5.4. Look, it was fairly simple route tree. I thought he ran his routes very well. He's so good against zone coverage because he's just so good at finding that soft spot in the zone. That's kind of what Clemson did. Clemson had a ton of manufactured targets for him. I'm not going to lie. Like those 77 receptions that I talked about in 2020 season, they're a little bit like over, like those aren't truly 77 times that he physically got open and got the ball to him. It was a lot of slants, screens, comebacks, things like that got him open quickly in space. This is a guy who's probably just going to be like, he's your second and third down wide receiver that you're just trying to get a couple extra yards and move the change, right? That's the type of guy he is. I don't think this is like the ultimate playmaker on the boundary or anything like that, or really anything close to that. Hands at a 5.3, very positive grade. There was nothing about him that I could put it any higher for me because look, he doesn't have the longest wingspan. He smaller guy. You kind of need to get it in his breadbasket, but I mean drops were very minor. I will say, like, if there was a situation where I think he was getting hit while the ball was coming, wasn't a guy that had like those strong hands to like bring it in, right? Like things like that could have brought that grade up, but it didn't for me. Didn't see it enough, so I brought it down to a 5.3, which is again checks the box. He can catch. It's fine. We're good. Moving on to athleticism at a 5.4. This is the grade where it's like, okay, so in my grading system, if you never watched these videos before, my grading system of 4.5 is my deadline average. Anything lower that is technically a negative grade. Anything higher than that is a positive. And anywhere from like 5 to 5.5 is usually like my checks the box grade, right? Like that's fine. It's good. It checks the box. We can move on. We don't have to really worry about that. I'm not worried about it. So for athleticism to be at a 5.4, yeah, I'm not worried about it, but at the wide receiver position, you want it to be higher than this, right? Like at a 5.4, I think this is like my biggest issue with Amari Rogers. That's like, I came away watching his film just like, meh. And I'm not gonna lie, this was a really tough eval for me, just in general. Like I struggled a little bit because, he was kind of always open versus zone. Like I didn't get to see a whole lot of like, impressive things. I didn't get to see him versus press coverage or anything. He played in the slot. He saw off coverage a ton, and that's great. That's all well and good, but it was a lot of schematic things. I was never impressed with the player. It's just like Clemson's offense is kind of collegey and really good, and just like, they do a lot of things really well. They chip away at defenses and get a ton of yards doing it. So there was a lack of like, that was awesome kind of thing for me. And I know I'm not explaining that very well. I do apologize. But for me, not a negative grade. It's a 5.4. It's fine. Like I'm not worried about it, but I didn't come away impressed. And I think that's like my biggest like thing about Amari Rogers. I'm just like, meh. Like I look at him as a guy who's like, I don't see a super high ceiling and I kind of see a low floor. I'll be honest. Like he could be out of the NFL in a couple of years. So I know that's not like a glowing debate, but he's a wide receiver that's in my top 15. So I don't hate him. Don't get me wrong. But there were just certain things I was like, okay, not awesome. Quickness at a 5.7. Again, this is kind of the same thing for me where like, okay, I would like it to be a little bit more. I would like there to be be more of a wow factor for me. There's not. But at the end of the day, look, he is very quick. He's very sudden. He can, he explodes upfield with the ball in his hands. He's very good with the ball in his hands overall. And you get him the ball in space and he creates yards. That's essentially all that he did at Clemson. And he did it at a very high level, created 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. So there's nothing to complain about there. Contested catch at 2.4. Again, this is really not what you're asking him to do. It's a negative grade, very bad negative grade. Smaller guy who, again, I don't think he caught balls very well when he was pressured and when he was, catching the ball while he was getting hit or anything like that. That just wasn't what I saw consistently. So yeah, that's not going to be a good grade. Yak at a 7.7. This is a grade I spent a lot of time thinking about, right? And as I was like preparing for this video, getting all my thoughts together, I kept coming back to it and it's like, do I really think it's that high? Because for me, 7.7 is an elite grade, and that's a very, very high elite grade overall. This is out of 9. I almost never give players an 8 or above. So this is a really, really good grade for me. And the reason I stuck with it is because I do think he's so good with the ball in his hands. Like, I knew that's a very positive grade no matter what. But the reason I'm saying it's elite for me is because of his ability to create yards and create yards after catch in a lot of different ways, right? He almost has like a running back's body. Like, this to me, this is a guy who would be playing running back, 10 years ago. I think now he kind of realized, oh shit, a wide receiver lasts a lot longer in the NFL than a running back. So let me switch to wide receiver, figure out that position and play that at a high level instead of, beating my body up for 4 years in college and then only having 4 years in the NFL to make any money. Oh wait, that's my rookie contract. I'm done. I'm out. I didn't really get to make any serious money. Sorry, I just went on like a total running back tangent. I do apologize, but like, so true, by the way. But for him, back to Omari Rogers and yards after catch, he does have that quickness. He has that shiftiness. He has all those things that you want to see. It's not like to a Tutu Atwell's level to where it's like just ridiculous shiftiness, ridiculous quickness, and you can just get away from everybody. It's not that, but he has a little bit more of like that running back ability to like run through contact, to run through people, not through people, but to slip off of a tackle and things like that and create yards that way. So that is very real, and that's very relevant. I think that's why I put it at a 7.7. Cut and change of direction at a 6.6. Yeah, I mean, this kind of goes into all the things I've already talked about, right? He's just so good and shifty underneath, and he's so good at getting away from people and creating space in that way. So cut and change of direction is very, very good. Route tree at a 4.5. I already kind of mentioned it, right? This is my baseline average grade because he did a lot of things underneath, but at the end of the day, it was an expansive route tree and it was not special by any means. I do think he'll have to work on that. He'll have to work on his route running and route tree at the next level, as will most prospects at this level. Like, let's just be honest. But I'm not super worried about it either. Contact balance at a 5.5. Yeah, this is good. I mean, it's good for like a smaller guy that we're talking about. This is not like a negative grade by any means. And I do think he, I don't think he gets beat up by any means. Like at the, and this is a lot of the times in the slot, you're talking about like linebackers or something like that are trying to push you off your route. And of course it can happen, it does, but he regains balance and runs his routes and doesn't really get disrupted a whole lot in that way. So I came away very impressed for like the size that he is to really not ever be just like, disrupted in a very serious way. Now, again, I didn't see him versus press a lot, and I'm sure, if an outside boundary corner comes up and presses him, he's probably going to struggle against that. But again, I don't foresee him having to deal with that a whole lot in the NFL level. Body control at a 4.9, a slight positive grade. That's a fine grade for me. Release at a 6.6. I think he gets off the line very well. He's very fluid off the line. He has a lot of different ways that he can get off the line. This is something that I really liked, and it was a very, very positive grade for me. Separation at a 3.9. And look, listen, this is specifically your ability to separate versus like a man coverage thing. This isn't like your ability to find space in zone. Like I mentioned that a handful of times already. Yes, he's very good at that. We know that. I think we already knew that. Separation is more about your athletic profile and your ability to create space via your route running and via just pure speed and athleticism. It's a negative grade. It is what it is. Granted, I didn't get to see a lot of that. I've already kind of mentioned how he was used used in this offense a good bit, so I don't need to go back to that, but you kind of get what I'm saying with that. I don't see an athletic profile that says like he's just going to create on his own. No, he used his scheme to his advantage. He was very good in this scheme, and I think he's going to have to go to the NFL and be kind of scheme dependent in that same way. Blocking at a 5.8. Listen, this is a big thing for your slot receivers, kind of smaller guys. Like I need to see you fight. I need to see you take these nickel corners, these maybe smaller linebackers and these safeties out of the play. He did that very well at a 5.8. I was fine with it. Of course, he's going to get blown up by a big old linebacker. He's going to get blown up by a DN or something like that. He didn't face that a whole lot, but at the end of the day, I mean, this is a guy who blocks ferociously, does everything he can in that regard, and I'm fine with that. That's a very, very good grade for me. Overall, guys, I look at Omari Rogers as a guy who can come into the right scheme, he's a little bit scheme dependent, go into a good slot receiver position on the right team that can utilize him, be kind of a chains mover. I don't see him as a guy who's ever going to be like your 1,000-yard, 1,200-yard type of receiver who just balls out at the next level. That's not really what I see for him, but he can be a good, addition to a wide receiver core and can be utilized in a lot of different ways and at the wide receiver position. But I'm going to be honest with you guys, this is a tough eval for me. I could be a little off. Maybe I'm a little too high on him, maybe a little too low on him. I'm not sure exactly, and this is going to be one that I'm going to go back to in a year or two and kind of check out, like, okay, where was I at and where should I have been at on this type of player, because I did struggle. Just the way he was used in that offense, it never it was never anything that the wide receiver did. It was always just like, okay, you're a guy in college that's getting the ball from the best quarterback that we've seen in college in a long time, and the scheme is really good, and you're always kind of open. There's always really never anybody around you, so it's like that was a struggle for me. It really was. Now again, this also goes back to last year. I kind of liken him a little bit to a KJ Hill from last year. Went to Ohio State, drafted by the Chargers in like the 7th round, went a lot lower than I thought he was, and I was actually kind of high on KJ Hill. He was one of like the early draft profiles that I did last year, and I would say go back and look at that, but the audio was trash, the video was trash. Like, I hadn't figured it out yet, to be honest, and I still probably haven't, but it was a lot worse then than it is now. So I did a video on him. I was in love with his route running. I was a lot higher on him than I should have been. I think I had him like as a 4th round guy, might have had him as a 3rd round guy, I'm not exactly sure, but I was way higher than I should have been, and it was a big miss for me, and I think maybe me being like a little bit skittish on Omari Rogers was like me realizing that I made a mistake with the KJ Hill and trying to rectify it. And listen, it's a growing process for me. I think that's all we can do as analysts and as people that are trying to strive for the best they can be in any field. Recognize your mistakes and try and grow from them. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this Omari Rogers grade. I could be wrong. We'll see. I still have him as a top 15 wide receiver in a very good wide receiver class, so I don't hate him by any means. I just see kind of a limited ceiling for him, and I could see him having that floor of a like 7th round guy who just isn't utilized in the NFL, and we'll see what happens with the KJ Hill. I don't know, but maybe doesn't become anything of what I'm even expecting as a guy who like I do see as a slot receiver in the NFL that can be productive at the next level, right? So I know I just went on a tangent. I'm sorry, but I kind of had to get all my thoughts out. Hopefully that made sense. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you're interested in more NFL draft content, and follow the journey with me, guys. Peace.